The night of March 12, 1945, settled over the Ruhr Valley like a suffocating blanket. Lieutenant James Hartley stood inside the cramped radar trailer at RAF Gok, watching green, phosphorescent blips crawl across the SCR 584 screen. The equipment hummed with electrical life, filling the metal box with warmth that contrasted sharply with the freezing air outside. Contact bearing 270, altitude 8,000 feet, Sergeant Bill Morrison called out, his Brooklyn accent cutting through the mechanical drone. His fingers moved across the dials with practiced precision, fine-tuning the signal that bounced invisibly through the darkness. Hartley leaned closer, studying the formation. 12 aircraft, maybe 15, moving southeast toward Essen. The timing felt wrong. Allied bomber streams had already passed hours ago, their payloads delivered onto German industrial targets with devastating accuracy. These contacts were heading the opposite direction, toward British-held territory. German night fighters, Hartley said quietly. They're hunting stragglers. The SCR 584 radar system had arrived at Gok only 3 weeks earlier, part of the massive technological effort pushing into the collapsing Reich. Unlike the older British systems, the American radar could track multiple targets simultaneously, painting a complete picture of the airspace above the devastated landscape. The Germans had no idea this technology now watched their every movement. Technical Sergeant Roy Chen adjusted his headset, relaying coordinates to the night fighter direction center. His Mandarin-accented English carried urgency without panic. Vector 340 to intercept. RAF Mosquitoes inbound. ETA 4 minutes. Through the trailer's small window, Hartley could see the distant glow of fires still burning in Essen. The city had endured years of bombing, its steel mills and factories reduced to twisted metal skeletons. Yet German fighters still rose to defend what remained, their pilots flying with the desperation of men protecting their homeland's final breaths. The radar showed the Luftwaffe formation splitting. 3 aircraft broke away, climbing rapidly. The lead pilot had sensed something, perhaps noticing the absence of expected bomber streams or detecting unusual radio traffic. German pilots weren't fools. They'd survived years of brutal air combat through skill and instinct. Lead element changing course, Morrison reported. They're turning north. Hartley grabbed the field telephone, cranking the handle. Control, this is Radium 5. We have enemy fighters probing our coverage. They may be testing for gaps. The response came through crackling static. Acknowledged. Radium 5. Continue tracking. Mosquitoes are engaging. The SCR 584's accuracy was remarkable, capable of tracking targets within 200 yards at ranges exceeding 30 miles. The system's conical scanning antenna rotated smoothly atop the trailer, its invisible beam sweeping the sky with mechanical patience. Each pulse traveled at the speed of light, bouncing off aluminum fuselages and returning with information about range, bearing, and altitude. Morrison suddenly tensed. New contacts, multiple aircraft bearing 090 low altitude. They're coming in fast over the Rhine. Hartley felt his pulse quicken. This was different. The new contacts flew barely 500 feet above ground, using terrain masking to avoid detection. It was a technique the Luftwaffe had perfected during years of defensive operations, flying just above the radar horizon where older systems couldn't see them, but the SCR 584 could. Count, Hartley demanded. 8. No, 10 aircraft. Speed indicates Ju-88s or Du-217s. Morrison's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened on the tracking controls. They're heading straight for our position. Chen was already on multiple radio channels, coordinating defensive responses. Anti-aircraft batteries around Gok came alive, their crews racing to their guns. The German bombers had somehow learned the location of the American radar station, and they were coming to destroy it. The trailer shook as nearby 40mm Bofors guns opened fire, their rhythmic thumping adding percussion to the night. Tracer rounds arced upward, creating luminous pathways through the darkness. Hartley watched the radar screen, seeing the German formation continue its approach with unwavering determination. Range 4,000 yards and closing, Morrison called out. The lead German bomber suddenly disappeared from the screen, A moment later, an orange fireball bloomed in the distance, visible through the trailer's window. One of the mosquitoes had found its target, cannon shells ripping through the Junkers fuel tanks. But the others kept coming. Chapter 2. The hunter becomes hunted. Hauptmann. Ernst Köhler pushed his Ju-88's control column forward, dropping his bomber even lower. The Rhine River flashed beneath him, a silver ribbon in the moonlight. Behind him, his bombardier Lieutenant Dieter Braun hunched over the bomb site, preparing for their attack run. 2 minutes to target, Braun's voice crackled through the intercom. Köhler had flown this route 3 times before, always at night, always low. The intelligence officer had been clear. American radar equipment was operating from Goch, coordinating devastating interceptions against Luftwaffe formations. Without it, German night fighters might regain some advantage in the increasingly hopeless air war. The Jumo engines roared as Köhler banked slightly, correcting his course. Flak erupted ahead, angry red bursts that lit the sky with brief violence. The Americans knew they were coming. Somehow, impossibly, they were tracking aircraft at altitudes where radar shouldn't work. "Flak at 10 o'clock, radioed Feldwebel Hans Richter from the dorsal gun position. "Heavy concentrations around the target area." Köhler gritted his teeth. 3 of his 10 aircraft were already gone, swatted from the sky by the ghostly British mosquitoes that seemed to materialize from nowhere. The rest pressed on because orders were orders, and because destroying that radar might save German lives tomorrow. Through his windscreen, Köhler saw the airfield at Goch, illuminated by searchlights and the muzzle flashes of anti-aircraft guns. Small buildings clustered near the runway. One would house the American radar. But which one? "Target acquisition difficult," Braun reported, frustration evident. "Too many structures, need positive identification." Before Köhler could respond, tracers laced the air beside his canopy. A mosquito had found him, its 4 20mm cannons hammering rounds toward the Ju-88. Köhler threw the bomber into a violent sideslip, diving toward the treetops. The aircraft shuddered as cannon shells punched through the port wing, leaving ragged holes that screamed in the slipstream. "We're hit!" Richter shouted. "Port engine losing oil pressure!" Köhler fought the controls as the damaged engine coughed and sputtered. The Junkers wanted to roll left, to spiral into the dark earth below. He countered with opposite rudder, muscles straining, keeping the bomber level through sheer force of will. The mosquito banked for another pass, its silhouette sharp against the stars. But Richter was ready this time, his MG-81 machine gun chattering in short, disciplined bursts. Tracer rounds walked across the British fighter's fuselage. The Mosquito's starboard engine erupted in flames and the aircraft peeled away, trailing smoke and fire toward a forced landing. "Good shooting, Hans," Köhler called out, allowing himself a moment of grim satisfaction. But the port engine was dying. Oil temperature climbed into the red zone. Köhler made his decision instantly. "Dieter, prepare to jettison bombs. We're aborting." "Hauptmann, we're almost there. Now, that's an order." Braun triggered the bomb release. 6 250-kilogram bombs tumbled into the darkness, falling harmlessly into farmland east of Goch. The sudden weight loss helped Köhler gain precious altitude, climbing to 800 feet before the port engine seized completely, its propeller windmilling uselessly. Köhler feathered the dead engine and turned east, toward German lines. Behind him, 2 more Ju-88s pressed their attack, releasing their bombs over the airfield complex. Explosions rippled across Goch, orange flowers blooming in the night. But the radar trailer remained untouched, its antenna continuing to rotate, tracking every aircraft in the sky. Inside the trailer, Hartley felt the ground shake from nearby impacts. Dust rained from the ceiling seams, but the SCR-584 never wavered, its screen showing the retreating German bombers with perfect clarity. "They're breaking off," Morrison reported. 3 aircraft destroyed, 2 damaged and limping home. The rest are scattering. Hartley exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been holding his breath. The attack had failed. The Germans had thrown experienced crews at a critical target and accomplished nothing except adding more names to the casualty lists. Chen removed his headset, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. RAF confirms 4 kills, 2 probables. Our losses are minimal, some cratered runway, damage to the motor pool. The telephone rang. Hartley answered. Listening as Control relayed new orders. When he hung up, he turned to his crew with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. We're moving forward tomorrow. 8th Army wants radar coverage over the Rhine crossings. He paused, looking at the screen where German contacts still fled eastward. Those pilots out there just learned what we can do, and they're going to tell everyone. Chapter 3. The Intelligence Gap. 3 days later, Major Wilhelm Schreiber sat in a bunker beneath Dusseldorf, studying reconnaissance photographs with growing unease. The Luftwaffe intelligence officer had spent the morning interviewing survivors from the Gulk raid, and their reports painted a disturbing picture. They knew we were coming before we crossed the Rhine, Hauptmann Köhler explained, his left arm in a sling from his crash landing. Perfect intercept vectors, anti-aircraft positions already trained on our approach paths. It was as if they could see us in complete darkness. Schreiber nodded grimly. Similar reports had arrived from across the shrinking Reich. German formations were being intercepted with impossible accuracy. Night fighters that once hunted freely now found themselves the prey. The Allies possessed some technological advantage that German intelligence had failed to identify or counter. Describe the trailer you saw at Gulk, Schreiber prompted. Köhler closed his eyes, recalling details. Rectangular, perhaps 5 meters long. A rotating antenna on top, dish-shaped. American markings. It was positioned away from other structures with heavy camouflage netting. Schreiber made notes comparing Köhler's description with other intelligence fragments. The Americans had deployed a new type of radar, far more capable than anything previously encountered. While German scientists had developed early warning radars like Würzburg and Freya, they'd concentrated on defensive systems. The Allies had apparently solved problems of mobile, accurate fire control. A junior officer entered, handing Schreiber a decoded message. He read it twice, feeling cold settle in his stomach. American forces crossed the Rhine at Remagen yesterday, he said quietly. They're expanding the bridgehead. Our counterattacks are being shredded by coordinated air and artillery strikes. He looked up at Köhler. Strikes directed by radar. The implications were staggering. If American radar could track aircraft with such precision, it could likely direct artillery fire against ground targets, coordinate air support, and provide early warning of German movements. The technological gap had become a chasm. What can we do? Köhler asked. Schreiber stood, gathering his documents. We adapt, Hauptmann. We fly lower, disperse more widely, attack during weather that degrades radar performance. We make ourselves harder targets. He paused at the door. And we accept that we're fighting an enemy who can see in the dark while we're nearly blind. After Köhler departed, Schreiber remained alone with maps and reports. The war was lost. Anyone with functioning eyes could see that. But professional duty demanded he provide his remaining pilots with whatever advantages remained possible. He drafted a technical bulletin describing American radar capabilities and distribution methods for units across the Western Front. It would arrive too late for most. The Allies were advancing too quickly, their technological superiority enabling operational tempos that German forces couldn't match. Still, some might survive because of this information. Some pilot might evade interception, some unit might successfully mask its movements. In a collapsing empire, small mercies mattered. Chapter 4. The View from Both Sides. On March 24, 1945, Lieutenant Hartley watched history unfold on his radar screen. Operation Varsity, the largest single-day airborne operation in history, filled the sky with over 1,600 transport aircraft and 1,300 gliders. The SCR-584 tracked them all, ensuring safe corridors through friendly anti-aircraft zones while monitoring for German interference. The screen glowed with contacts, a constellation of green dots representing British and American paratroopers descending beyond the Rhine. Hartley's team had positioned the radar trailer on the western bank, providing coverage for the crossing forces and the vulnerable airborne units. German fighters attempting to intercept the northern formations, Morrison reported, bearing 320, altitude 12,000 feet. Hartley relayed coordinates to fighter control. Within minutes, P-51 Mustangs vectored onto the German aircraft, their superior numbers and positioning turning the engagement into a rout. The Luftwaffe fighters fled after losing 3 aircraft without achieving a single kill. Through the trailer's window, Hartley could see the massive operation unfolding. Parachutes filled the sky like dandelion seeds, gliders released from their tow aircraft, artillery shells arced across the river. The Rhine, Germany's final natural barrier, was being breached with industrial efficiency. Chen monitored German radio frequencies translating intercepted communications. Their ground control is in chaos, and he reported. They're trying to coordinate responses but can't get accurate information about our dispositions. Because we can see them, Hartley thought. But they can't see us. The technological advantage was overwhelming, but Hartley felt no triumph. He'd read intelligence reports about German cities reduced to rubble, civilians starving, refugees flooding westward. The radar that gave him such power to track and destroy was simply another tool in a war that had already consumed millions. A new contact appeared on the screen, moving fast and low from the east. Hartley studied it carefully. Single aircraft, altitude barely 300 feet, speed indicating a fighter type. It was heading directly toward their position. Possible hostile, he announced. Stand by for emergency procedures. Morrison tracked the contact with increasing precision. The aircraft maintained its course, flying with the determination of someone on a specific mission. Anti-aircraft guns around the trailer swiveled, tracking the approaching threat. Then Chen intercepted a transmission. Wait, it's a German pilot requesting permission to land. He wants to surrender. The aircraft, a Messerschmitt Bf 109, circled Gok airfield once before dropping its landing gear. It touched down smoothly, rolling to a stop near a group of astonished Allied personnel. The pilot climbed out slowly, hands raised, and waited to be taken into custody. Later, Hartley learned the pilot's story. Oberleutnant Franz Becker had flown combat missions since 1940, surviving the Battle of Britain, the Eastern Front, and North Africa. He'd watched his country's military collapse, seen his cities destroyed, buried too many friends. The radar-guided intercepts that shredded German formations with mechanical efficiency had simply been the final confirmation of inevitable defeat. I'm tired of dying for nothing, Becker told interrogators in fluent English. The war is over. Some of us just haven't accepted it yet. His words spread through the Allied intelligence network, reaching Hartley through official channels. The American lieutenant sat in his trailer that evening, watching the radar screen paint its endless picture of the sky, and thought about the view from both sides. The Germans had developed radar too, had pioneered jet aircraft and ballistic missiles, had fielded capable tanks and skilled soldiers. But they'd been overwhelmed by Allied industrial capacity, strategic bombing, and technological innovations like the SCR-584 that turned night into day and invisibility into perfect transparency. On April 7th, Hartley's unit moved east again, following the advancing armies deeper into Germany. The radar trailer set up outside Wesel, then Münster, tracking diminishing Luftwaffe resistance with clinical efficiency. Each day brought fewer German contacts, until finally the screen showed only Allied aircraft flying unopposed through conquered skies. When Germany surrendered on May 8th, Hartley stood outside his trailer listening to distant celebrations. The SCR-584 still hummed, still tracked the peaceful sky, its war finished but its purpose forever changed. The technology that had helped win the war would reshape peacetime aviation, air traffic control, and weather forecasting. He thought about Hauptmann Köhler, somewhere in a POW camp, and Oberleutnant Becker, and all the other German pilots who'd flown against impossible odds. They'd been brave men fighting for a monstrous cause, and the radar had helped ensure their defeat. Morrison emerged from the trailer, grinning. "War's over, Lieutenant. We actually made it." Hartley nodded, managing a smile. "Yeah, Bill. We made it." The green glow from the radar screen still visible through the open door, painting the future with the same technology that had illuminated so much death. Progress and destruction, forever intertwined in the terrible mathematics of modern war.